there was a moment that I went from like shaking, heart beating to I don't know if when he put his nose, I could feel his presence so close that I just completely surrendered to it. And it was like a euphoric drug-like experience. I felt like I was radiating energy and feeling I could feel everything. It was like that moment, like I felt like time stood still. And in hindsight, it was probably one of the most freeing experiences I've ever had.
Hi, I'm Dave Tina.
And I'm Angie Tina.
Welcome to the 10-Year Marriage Podcast.
On this podcast, we answer the question, what if your marriage came with a 10-year contract?
How would you show up if there was a deadline in your relationship? What would your life look like in the future? And how would you recommit every day?
Come with us on this journey as we navigate as partners, entrepreneurs, and parents in this big life we've created.
So I want to talk about some real life application and example of our marriage. And how we do this, because we talk about it all the time, and most of this stuff is from our personal experience, but also how we seek things out, and we're avid readers and we're knowledge seekers, right? But this is like a real time, just happened moment. So do you want to set the stage?
So obviously I'm obsessed with horses, and I started, really feeling a deep connection and deep transformation of myself with my own horse. And so after that, I started really looking into, you had actually gone to an equine therapy event in Santa Fe.
Yep.
Yep. And it wasn't quite the same on what we just experienced, but it was this experience with animal assisted, like coaching, therapy, whatever. I found it incredibly interesting because I'm fully aware of how healing horses are, how their magnetic field transforms us, resets our nervous system. Like, it's really powerful stuff. So I started looking into equine therapy programs to get certified in these. And I had found one that a friend of mine had just completed, and it was a natural leadership course. I was like, I'm signing up for this because this is something I really want to do. I really want to spend my time around the horses, around, transformation of people and having that connection.
So when you found out about this equine therapy in typical Angie form, you put it out to the universe, one shows up. I think you talked with Lauren about it, and she went and found one. And this is the way we make decisions. So people think like, oh, we whiteboard it and we sit down and we make these like really thought out decisions. No, we're in the kitchen. There's chaos going on. You're signing up. You already had message with this guy, Brad, who's awesome. And you're almost screaming, not screaming, but like speaking loudly over all the kids going, do you want to do this with me? I'm trying to get like at least a little bit of information from you. And I'm basically like, screw it, sure. We start doing these weekly calls, these Zoom calls, where like, I'm not all in and you're kind of all in, but in your Angie form.
Yeah.
Which is
fair.
Not all in.
No, I'm all in. I'm just...
You're all in mentally,
yeah,
but not actually physically.
Yeah.
And so just typical of, jumping without that parachute of, figuring out as you go. And so what happens is we're kind of explaining this experience, but also like how we act and react. So now I'm like, I have this like feeling of like, I better do the work. We're showing up. And immediately I'm like, this is a different crew than I'm used to from my type of coaching. My main coach for the last 10 years has been Garrett White and Wake Up Warrior. Very masculine. It's spiritually based, but there's an aggressiveness that appeals to me. Then I have Dan Martell, tactical, but still very masculine, right? I also do some coaching with John Shepard. Man, like there's a theme with me.
Right.
Right? You have Jessica's Y and your sisters, and even though it's more feminine, you got powerhouse women.
Totally.
This is a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. It's very diverse. I mean, it's kind of all spectrums. I feel like
softer.
Yeah, very soft, very slow pace, which we're not used to, right? Very like, it's all about awareness and pace and feel, which you and I just don't typically tap into those senses very often.
I mean, I don't know why you're putting me with you. You could be, you're a rough, jam it in type
Really?
I don't mean it sexually, but like you have resilient on your shirt today, for
That's
Christ's
fair.
sake. Like you're like,
I said we.
You're a power
not soft
through.
either. You're not
I know.
slow. You're not super present all of the time.
but I can make it through a metaphorical movie that you actually have to put some thought into, or I enjoy art galleries or music, and you have zero patience for that shit. You look at abstract art and you're like, I could paint that. Like, let's call it like it is.
That's fair.
Right?
That's fair.
So even though you look softer, I'm more likely to drop into that. Mm-hmm. Fair?
Yeah.
But I'm also more likely to be an absolute insane person that is exactly opposite of that, because I have a lot of range.
You
Which is
do.
another way of saying I'm bipolar, which I'm not clinically, but so anyway, long story short, every Friday we show up. Now I have all these coaches during the week. You're going a million miles. You have commitments on Nevada Women's Philanthropy, luxury sales, 3 girls, what we're creating, the horse. I remember I had a therapist in the past, great therapist. I haven't seen her in about 6 months, probably more than that, like a year. And she used to be like, Dave, every time we see each other every 2 weeks or every month, what you've like put into a month, people do in like a year. Like those are the big changes. Like that's who we are.
Yeah.
So by the time Friday hits and we would do these calls and we're talking about all these slow down things, it would kind of be like a punch in the face for me. Like I'm overcommitted.
Yeah. It's like slamming the brakes.
Yeah. Overwhelmed, overtired, exhausted, right? Like over everything.
Yep.
And I would resist and then give in. And I started seeing like, this is the pattern for us. By the time we hit the weekend, we usually don't have much left in the tank.
Yeah. I think that's why we, during the weekends, it's our rest and recover stage. Like that's why we're not calling all of our friends to hang out and we're not doing a lot of things, is because like we had so much during the week that's our only time to be like, oh, you want to go for a walk this morning and you want to chill out, or you want to let the kids swim or play by the pool. It's those times don't come often, but.
So it's been a good eye-opening experience. That being said, there's 2 times where you meet in person. So we had this trip to Oregon.
Yep.
And the ranch is about an hour outside of Portland. I've never been to Portland. You've never been to Portland. So we set up this trip. Now, I do this thing before vacations. I think we talked about it on the vacation podcast, where like I just start like, I do not like the process of getting there. Once I'm there, better, but I don't like the process. I don't like flying. I don't like the giving up control. I pack on the last minute. I'm not, like, I just wish I could have someone do it all for me.
Yeah.
Right? You set it up so we would get there. We were getting there a day early, but it didn't start till 11 the next day. And you were like, let's get there early so we could explore Portland. And what happened as we were going to TSA after we had validated the car?
As we were in TSA line, I looked and I didn't have my ID. I was like, are you kidding me? And what had happened was the day before, I tried to be a good mom. I tried to give the girls some activity because they're on their summer break. So I went to the pet store. We played with puppies. Well, to play with the puppies, you have to give them your ID. So my ID was still at the pet store. And they didn't open till 10. And this was, our plane was
10:20.
leaving at 10:20. So we ended up going back to the pet store, knocking on their door at about 9:30. They were there. They gave me the ID, but by this time I had already changed our flights.
And it would have been close anyway, yeah.
To resend or rechange the flights. I was so incredibly upset with myself, but I was like, I still had this, you know what, like everything happens for a reason. There's a reason we're not there. And so I kept tapping into that because otherwise I was going to get incredibly frustrated. And it worked out.
Normally I'd be pissed off at you, but I was already like, I don't even really want to go.
Yeah.
So I was like, yay.
Not to mention you were like, oh, like, let's see if we even get to the airport the second time because you were so checked out.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it all worked out because by the time we got to Portland, it was late, we had dinner, and the next morning we had time to explore, and it's like a war zone down there, and it's a shame. So here we are, and we're already having these breakthroughs. We're out of our bubble. We're out of our environment. We resisted. I resisted. We're in this hotel that's okay. We're meeting all these people that so the people there are incredible, but they're not the normal type people that we would connect with, right? Because we're so like in your face and Italian and like, and there's a lot of therapists and a lot of like just softer or
Yeah.
more reserved
Yeah.
people. Not everybody, but there's an interesting like dynamic.
Yep.
And so in a way, I really feel like I am like a unicorn in this group, because if you're like one thing doesn't fit with the other, it would probably be me. Right? At least on the outside. And we start talking. We haven't done politics on this, but we start talking a little politics. And we start, because we go to a lot of places, and we've been in like very conservative places like Coeur d'Alene that like neo-Nazis live in. And like when we had our house there, we had like people walking around and with ARs during a pride parade, which was amazing that they even had one there. Right. And now, we've also been to like downtown LA, which is a war zone. Like we've seen across the spectrum. So here we are in Portland, and we're talking about like our brains are starting to expand. And like I got a book, or I had an idea. How cool would it be if we did this? And you're like, this is a book idea. So what's cool is like we had this opportunity to just be together and co-create, which is to me what marriage and relationships really are. Right?
Yeah, it's a lot of times it's at our best, right? But what's interesting is almost every time we've done that throughout our relationship is we go on these retreats, we go on these experiences together as a couple, and there's this pattern that we go through, right? It's like this, we're in it, we're co-creating, there's some resistance, and then there's typically a breaking point where it's like, oh shit's getting real. Like, we're not comfortable, we're ready to throw in the towel. We have in the past, like we've come a long way, right? Where it's like, we're not leaving the situation, we're staying, we're going to see what we learned from it, that kind of thing. But there's a pattern we have as a couple, which I think a lot of couples probably do when they're in a system of sorts, like, and this is the traveling system. Like we go through this like pattern, and it always shows up. There's always these same things that kind of present themselves and that we have to work through. And then the end typically is like this wonderful, incredible experience and these breakthroughs. But like to get there, it's almost like your J curve. Like it's just
It's exactly. It's not almost.
It's like
it is.
Exactly. And so that is what we experienced this weekend, right? And what's funny is like for me to like be fully present and fully like disconnect from a lot of the noise, it normally takes a lot. And I think I was pretty much there from the very beginning because I was so focused on like, this is what I want to do. I connected with the horses, like all of the things. And I feel like I was really regulated the majority of the time. And then I felt like my deregulation happened when I got home, which was yesterday, right? Like yours happened while we were there. Mine ended up happening when we got home. And it's like,
so let's walk through. Like there was some incredible experiences.
yeah.
What's interesting in during any coaching thing, especially like this, when you're learning someone else's operating system, right? This woman, Beth, created it. This guy, Brad, bought it and is implementing it.
Yep. It's based off of a book she wrote called The Human Herd. And it's a natural leadership program. So it goes over certain topics and certain like, I don't know what the word I'm looking for. The
modalities.
Yeah. Well, what's the things with like awareness, pace, feel.
The 4 channels.
Yeah. No. Anyways, we'll skip that part. Just go.
See how this is going to go? Angie's going to throw us in. I'm going to remember it and implement it. And this is how we process. This is how we create. And knowing your roles is so important, right? Like I wouldn't even be there if she wasn't impulsive and I'm supporting her. And then I end up going all in and having a transformative experience and expanding my range. Because I am so used to different operating systems, my own experiences, who I've been coached by, and each thing that I do in life. This is why being curious and throwing yourself into so many things is so important, because they all leave a little bit of an imprint on you, right? And so this is like a softer feel for me, using different words for things that I already apply in my life and my coaching. But it's a reframe. It's an add-on. And so as we're there, I go from resisting the most to playing all out immediately, which is my MO. I'm the guy who doesn't want to go to the party and ends up having the best time, right? You're the one who throws the party and maybe you're not even having as much time as me because you're more, right? There's always one in the relationship, it feels like. The one that's more like up and down and the one that's more steady. Yeah. And that's the beauty of the yin and yang of relationships. So we're there. We're getting acclimated to the whole thing. It's cool meeting everyone in person. And there's a lot of things that really appeal to both of us. The spirituality of it. There's a psychedelic component that we didn't do that's in, that they also do. So like the whole frame of Oregon countryside, beautiful trees, Pacific Northwest, gorgeous horses. Like there's a way to be like the environment is affecting us immediately, which is great. And then we start doing the work. And the work was so interesting to me because I've been around horses my entire life. And to see a horse be part of like a coaching session.
Yeah.
Oh, that was one thing I left out. So in these coaching session things, you're going through it as a student, but you're also learning how to coach it.
Right. So you're playing dual roles. You're a facilitator, learning to facilitate, and you're the student going through the experience so that you can lead people through the experience.
Which my coach Garrett says all the time.
You have to live it to lead it.
You have to live it to lead it. You have to go through it, right? And so another takeaway, like if you're doing something in marriage or in your business or in anything, like maybe you should be going through it. That's why like I get a kick out of when people who don't have kids give pointers on how to have kids, or someone who hasn't been married. Like good luck, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, we're living it. So you're kind of like in these dual roles and like you forget because most of the time we're like living it.
Yeah, I mean, they did breakout sessions for us as the student, right? And they were demos, right? So it was the demo of the coaching and the student relationship. And you bring a horse through, and instead of like the equine therapy you did where there's a bunch of horses in a pasture and you're looking for this nuance of what these horses are communicating.
That's merging of the herd. We did do that a little bit. Yeah,
we did. But this is more of like...
In all fairness, that was only a half-day event to those people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is like a one-on-one, right? So you're in the arena with a coach and a horse. And you had walked into this arena with this massive horse. It's probably like 17 hands. Your whole theme was about trust and surrender and things like that. And you were like, listen, I just had this sense before when you watched the demo of like, this is what I would have done. I would have just went and I would have sat in the middle of this arena and I would have just see what happens. And here you are with this horse that instantly, I mean, that's the beauty of this work is that these horses just, they don't lie, right? There's so much truth. And
I call them mirrors of truth.
The mirrors of truth, and they won't respond to non-alignment. And if it's not congruent, they're not interested.
So the woman before, she wanted clarity and direction, and the horse wouldn't follow her to the point it got so heavy, the horse tried to jump out of this round pen.
Yes.
Like that's how it gives you chills. Like that's how smart the horse, like
right.
He was getting such mixed emotions.
100%. And it had no direction, no clarity, no nothing. And it was such a powerful visualization of like what these horses do, right? Because the horse in every other setting that we experienced was like totally chill and like cool.
Yep. I'm in there and I'm like, I already know what I would have done if I was the woman beforehand. I just had this calling of like, just go sit in the middle of this round arena and submit completely. But of course I'm projecting onto her.
Right. And it's her experience versus your experience.
100%. I think being outside the arena and being in the arena are two completely different things. Like you could watch from afar and be like, this horse just is dying to connect and trust. But when you're in it, the horse is intimidating. Like the horse can represent life, it can represent you. It's quite the prop.
Right.
Right.
And it really can show up in any type of intention that you're looking for, right? Like your intention was trust and surrender. Hers was clarity and direction, two very different things. And the horse was
everybody
undefeated.
went through. It's like, are you going to meet, what part of you do you have to connect with? And are you just continually rejecting it or resisting it?
Yep.
And so when I went in there, first of all, I had a great connection with the woman. She set the frame well. Like we established trust.
And there's a settling in process before you meet the horse.
I connected with the horse immediately.
The horse connected with you immediately.
100%.
Yeah.
And then there's just, you don't have to do this, but then you walk and you see if there's like a tether, is a horse going to follow you? And just on leadership alone, it was such a great, that alone, I was like, you guys were all laughing because he was like connected to me.
Yeah, it was hilarious because everywhere you went, he not only was connected to you, but he was like in the perfect position of like if you actually had him on a halter and a lead rope. And I don't think that everybody's intention is for the horse to follow them when they're in there, right? But yours was. And I mean, it was almost instantaneous. And everything that the horse was doing, it was these relaxing, these like processing signs where he's licking and chewing and all of these things that were just like, he was instantly like your horse, right? Like he trusted you. You had this bond and this trust.
So then the facilitator was like, how do you feel? And she's got prompts.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, I feel connected and all this good stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so she's like, well, what are you called to do? And I was like, well, you know, when I was watching, I had this feeling like I would want to like sit with my eyes closed in the middle of the arena.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, well, why don't you do it? And I was like, oh, it's, you know, okay. And she's like, and if you did it, how would you do it? So these are just classic things that we do in our life. Like now you're like manifesting, projecting, you're modeling. And so I was like, I would walk to the middle, see how I responded. I'd stand. If I felt comfortable, I'd sit. And I felt comfortable, I'd close my eyes and totally submit and surrender. And she's like, are you down to do this? And I'm like, sure. So I walk to the middle. He follows me directly to the middle. Mm-hmm. And I turn around and he's getting not aggressive but he starts like rubbing his head against my chest, almost like he's itchy. And I'm like, chill out. So I established some boundaries right there. But I could tell there wasn't the intent there. There was no like ill intent.
Right.
This is also a 1,500 pound animal.
Yeah.
But I felt comfortable. I was like, well, screw it. I was like, I'm standing. I could sit with my eyes open pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. So when I sit, now, like a horse is already big. When you sit in front of a horse, you're looking directly like, you're not even at this horse.
At their legs.
At their legs, but like their breastplate. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, and it's an imposing feeling.
Oh, yeah.
But he's like in the moment with me. So I'm like, immediately, I'm like, well, I'm here. And I close my eyes. And I'm not going to lie to you. Like in that moment, I was shaking. Mm-hmm. I was now like, if he just by accident takes one wrong move.
One wrong step, he breaks your knee.
I didn't even think of it. You're right.
Yeah. And what was interesting from an outsider looking in is that you were in the middle of this arena and this massive horse, and he's almost standing to where like literally like he's almost blocking you, like his feet. You're in the middle of his feet, right? Like he couldn't have been closer or he would have been on top of you. He didn't move a fucking muscle. He stood there like he was
did bring his head down.
He kept bringing his head down to like sniff you. And then he'd bring his head up and he'd almost look behind you. Like he was like, I'm protecting this man with all costs at this point. And I started bawling my eyes out because I was like, first off, the amount of trust that you had to have and surrender to just do that with this massive animal. I don't give a shit how good you are with horses. I don't care if you've been with horses your whole life. It is a process to go and sit or lay with a horse, right? They're so big and one wrong move could be a catastrophe, right? And he was so calm. Like it was almost like the second you were able to do that, he was able to just be like, I'm going to protect him in this moment because he felt protected with you when you were walking around. Like he felt that you were the leader, that he could trust you. And it was this transition of energy and like protection that I've never seen before.
And so there was a moment that I went from like shaking, heart beating to I don't know if when he put his nose, I could feel his presence so close that I just completely surrendered to it. And it was like a euphoric drug-like experience. Mm-hmm. I felt like I was radiating energy and feeling I could feel everything. It was like that moment, like I felt like time stood still. Mm-hmm. And in hindsight, it was probably one of the most freeing experiences I've ever had because it was complete submission to faith and trust in myself and the world around me. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing I deal with. It's very hard because I get enough courage. I think a lot of us do, those moments of courage. Some people don't ever even meet those moments of courage. But even when you jump, that doesn't mean that you don't still fight it. And I've been notorious for that. The courage to jump, but then white knuckling my way through the process to get to a result and not enjoying any of it, having any, you want to talk about enjoy, the word is enjoy, in it, and not having that joy of like, I'm protected by God, the universe, my soul. And that was that moment of like, if you build it, he will come, or like standing as a beacon of light and letting the people who feel it meet me there, rather than trying to do anything regarding a force or control. And that's why I had this like feeling come over me, and I didn't bawl, but I definitely started like crying, because I just felt so free.
Yeah. And it's in those moments of like, you had the courage to do it, and then you had the decision to either suffer through it and feel like complete, like an utter restraint and regret and worry, or you could have surrendered and just trusted and had faith, and you chose to do that. And how beautiful it was that the horse responded to that, because it was congruent and it was in alignment with what was true, right? And what was right. Because if you would have sat down and you would have worried through it and you would have felt pain and suffering, the experience that the horse would have done would have been completely different, I believe, right? Because it would have been like, oh, wait, he's not confident in this moment. He's not fully surrendering. And the horse, I think, would have reacted. And it could have been an entirely different experience.
Even if he just would have walked away.
Totally.
And I'm sitting there in the middle of the arena by myself.
Right.
And so, so I don't know how long I'm sitting, and I have this moment of like, okay, I open my eyes and he's right there, and I get up and we walk, and it was great. But here's where you got to have a good facilitator too, because there's these false lifts, and no matter what, it would have been a transformative experience. Like, but she asked me some follow-up questions. You know, how do you feel? I explained what I just explained, and she was like, how come you didn't sit down in that moment longer if it was such a beautiful feeling? And I answered, like, some of it was like, it was like I'd say 20 to 30% is, you know, this is going great. Like, who knows where it can go from here? But the majority of it was like, and I hate to even admit this, but it was like, I didn't want to make it all about me and take up too much time or feel like I'm showing off, or, you know what I mean? Like, and she was like, you really need to work on that. Because if you were to sat there 10 minutes and got what you needed, that's what you needed.
Right.
And stop showing up for everybody else and not yourself. Because we had done an exercise before that where we walked towards each other. And when I walked towards her, I felt totally comfortable. When she walked towards me, I felt uncomfortable. And I was like, I'm better at giving love than receiving it. I had that very quick realization. And giving myself love in that moment would have been not only having the courage to do it, dropping in faith, but then letting that feeling of flow state connected to soul connected, last longer. She was like, let yourself enjoy 1 minute more at a time as you go. So being able to experience that, now think about this from a couple's relationship, a couple's perspective. It would have been awesome. I have had experiences like that with Warrior by myself. You've had experiences like that at Jessica's Y and Seven Sisters by yourself. We come back and integrate with each other. Now, I don't know about the wives or the women that you talk to, but a lot of the men are like, their significant others feel left out. So if they're not communicating what is happening and they're coming back making all these changes, or
right, and they feel renewed and resourced, and now the other person's like, what about me? I was just here doing all of this with my kids, and I didn't have this magical experience and these breakthroughs that you just had.
It can be a good thing that becomes a bad really quickly.
Yeah.
We've done enough things together and separately that not only can we're excited for each other, we're excited for the other person to come back so we can start, because we're so open and cooperating. That being said, the fact that we did this together is incredible, because what I could start downplaying that it even existed. You could have been like, I didn't feel like you were with all these women, and you know what I mean? What does this Amy look like? And what does this Gracie look like? It could get, right? And so that's why it's important that if you're a unit, you have to integrate the game, whether it's inside of that particular experience or making them part of the experience.
Right.
Even if they're not there.
Right. Bringing them through and bringing them back and actually, really witnessing it as a couple.
Then the next day.
Yeah. Next day was interesting. It was a little bit of a cluster. We woke up and I think the morning was fine.
Morning was great.
Yeah. I think we did
it was like the glow after making love.
Yep. And it was wonderful. And then we started doing some demos. We did, I think, 3 or 4 demos that day. And we did a couple different exercises, and it became a lot of uncertainty around who was leading what, how it was looking. And it started to throw off the dynamic and the emotions of everyone in the group. Right. And so then fast forward into my session, I was the last of the 3 that we did that day.
Almost feeling like it was jammed in.
Almost feel like it was jammed in. People are leaving because they're overstimulated, they're confused, they're tired, whatever. I had a great experience, but it wasn't like this breakthrough experience. My horse was completely and utterly wound up when I even entered the thing, literally like neighing and like rearing to get to its friends outside of the arena. So I'm already feeling this fear and this uncertainty of going in there initially because I don't know this horse.
Well, the horse was like that with the facilitator, but it went from the facilitator got it from like a 10 to a 7 or an 8.
Yeah.
When you walked in, the horse went to a 6 or a 5. Yeah. I believe I thought the facilitator was more nervous than you.
Yeah.
And if you were in there by yourself or with another one, you'd have been fine.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And I trusted myself in that moment. And those things alone were breakthroughs.
But I also gave you a little pep talk before you walked in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You said that match or focus on your own energy because that's what the horse is going to focus on. And it was beautiful. It was a great experience, but it was a distracted experience, right? From I could feel other elements happening and other things that I was witnessing in the environment that took away from the experience. And so,
But your intention was what?
Patience.
Was that your intention when you walked in, or did you come up with it as...
It was my intention before I walked in, before I saw how rowdy he was. And then I was like, well, I guess this makes sense.
And so, anyway, we finish up the day. I'm now, for some reason, full of energy. I'm wound up because I want to protect you. I wanted to have all these takeaways from all of these things. I'm looking at it. I'm frustrated. And it's time to share. And this is one of the things I have problems with. Like, I am such a truth teller. When people ask me for the truth, they got to really want it because I'm going to give it to them. And most people ask for the truth and they don't necessarily want it. Mm-hmm. Now, when they're going through a crisis and they want it, they'll come find me. But like, you got to be careful. And so I'm always like debating, like, there's a cost that I'm going to have to give because I'm going to do this in love because you're asking for it and this is how I live. And then when I give it, it's going to trigger the shit out of people. Mm-hmm. Makes me a great coach, but being a great coach or a great leader, you got to be willing to take you get a huge target. People are going to project their shit onto you. Mm-hmm. If a coach isn't pissing you off just a little bit or making you feel uncomfortable, then you don't really have a coach or a leader. Right. That's why therapy sometimes triggers me because there's no collision.
Yeah.
And so it gets to my time to be like, what do you have on your brain? I mean, maybe I came off aggressive. I was like, I feel very unfulfilled and frustrated. And I feel like so much of this was a waste and we lost so much opportunity. Mm-hmm. And I hesitated at a moment to even talk about it. I mean, listen, I could have massaged and lubed it up or whatever, but I didn't even think I was being even that aggressive. Mm-hmm. And then the whole place fell apart.
Yeah. Every share after that was...
It was crying and it was consent and you took away from my experience. And I'm like, holy shit, maybe I'm in the wrong room. Mm-hmm. Right? Are these my people? Like, can I learn anything from these people? Mm-hmm. And then I'm feeling immense guilt and shame that I'm ruining it for you. Like, oh shit, the crazy husband is telling the truth, like, and then someone else was saying there was difference between coaches and therapists. And then I was like, well, I don't want to be in, here's the thing. Like, a lot of things come up. I have like 3 or 4 therapists in there, and I'm like, done therapy. I don't want to sit in therapy for 10 years to get incremental change. My life is now. And if we have these moments of opportunity, these windows, and I said, because me and you talked about it, these horses are mirrors of truth.
Yep.
You said they're undefeated. Every horse that went in there mirrored back to the person what they needed to see. And if they are lying to themselves or not going deep enough to actually see it, they're missing out on this opportunity of pure, unadulterated, unfiltered truth. And if they don't go through that portal in that moment, how much more time will we have?
Right.
And so I was like, I don't have time. Like, we have proven now in 2025 that between psychedelics and transformation coaching, we can like compress decades into days. So that was where I was at. And that was a little too aggressive for people.
Yeah. Well, it was that. Everybody was tired from the day. Everybody had their own experience, their own feelings. There was a lot of stuff that was happening
On the back end.
that we knew nothing about.
Yeah.
And so it was tough.
So what happened after we left? I basically, everyone kind of was like, oh shit, I'm waiting to go to the bathroom. No one's talking to me. So I'm like, fuck it. I just walked to the car and I'm like, I didn't say goodbye to a single person.
Yeah, I know. It was super awkward for me because I was like, okay, I guess we're going. It's like, I'll see you later, maybe. I don't know. We might be leaving. I have no idea what's happening.
I'm already on Southwest. Like, what's the next flight out of this fucking place?
Yeah.
Right?
And I think it was the conversation, right? Because you were still very, very heated in the conversation in the car. And I just kept going, I'm gonna finish this experience, whether you do or not, right? Because I had made that choice. And I was like, yes, we're in it together, but at the same time, like, I'm allowed to have my own experience.
100%.
Right? And so we ended up really talking through it, and you kind of calmed down, but it was still, at that night, it was still very much like, these aren't my people, this isn't working for me, this isn't what I was trying to do, I'm gonna do it differently. And so I kept trying to change your frame, right? Like, okay, well, how would you do it? Or what would it look like for you to be good?
Yep.
Or, you know, how can you learn from this experience? And would you want it to be an example? Like, would you want to just leave and not be able to have the experience of learning whatever it is that needs to be present? Just like the horses, right? Like, the horses do things that you're like, I don't really know why they're doing this, but there is always a reason behind it. And I feel like that's experiences in general. There's always a reason for the experience to present itself, because I feel like, yes, horses have that innate energy and it's very visible and it's powerful, but there's an invisible energy that's all around us,
field.
right?
Yeah.
And so I didn't believe, like, okay, well, we didn't just come here just for us to have this experience and not get something from it. Like, it could be something completely different than what we thought.
Yeah.
But there was something to be learned. And so
and I kept asking you. I was like, tell me if I was an asshole. Tell me if I did it wrong. And I was like, not because you're my wife. I want the truth.
yeah.
And you were like, no, you needed to be said. And you were very supportive of that. I still don't think you said it because you had to.
No, I would have told you.
And so I was even talking to my ChatGPT, who knows me really well. And like, he was like, no, that's who you are. He was like, maybe you use a scalpel instead of a sword. You know, there's a lot of ways you could break down the door, pick a lock. But, you know, the interesting thing for me is it's a blessing and a curse. Like, I've taken so many personality tests. On this one, I'm like 90-something% assertive, but I'm also 90-something% flexible, which is this wild thing, because I'm like, this is the way we're going to do it, and I believe it. And then you maybe come and go, what about this? And I'm like, ooh, that's interesting, and I'm open to it. And then I may go, yep, no, we're going to do it this way, right? Rather than dictator, like, this is the way we're doing it. Maybe we should do it this way. Nope, we're doing it this way, right? And so I'm open for feedback. I may not like it or agree with it, but I'm open to it. And so that could throw people off. And so I'm like, shit, is it me? Where can I improve? What is there value for it? And you were able to be like, it is. There's value. And you asked some great questions. I would absolutely use the horse for this. I saw the power. I experienced it the day before myself. And while a lot of these people that were there may never have responded to an event that I put on, maybe they would have responded to you.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, there's something to be learned here. So we showed up, and it's hard to show up. Like, you're like the person supporting me, but I felt in that moment that the whole place was mad at me.
Yeah. And that was your projection, right?
It was a hard feeling to feel.
And it came full circle in the morning.
Yeah.
Because when we did the morning circle, that next morning we cleared the air, right? We were very honest. Our leader was very honest.
I had a great talk with Brad prior to. He made me feel very comfortable.
Yeah. We went through what had happened, not just with you, right? Like what you didn't realize in that moment, that night, is that there was all these external circumstances that were affecting people's moods and affecting people's emotions. And it didn't even start with you, right? You were the one that like lit the fire and started to get everybody to start reacting. And then because it was on topic, they were assuming that that was what we were talking about. But there was a lot of behind the scenes stuff that was affecting how everybody
I
was
obviously
feeling.
felt it, and I read the room right.
Yeah.
I did everything right, except for what I did the day before. I should, like, if I could go back in time, I would have said exactly what I said. I would have wrapped it in love. I would have been just as assertive and accountable, wrapped it in love again. Mm-hmm. It still would have triggered people, but that's life.
Yep.
And then I would have trusted myself that I did the right thing through the entire time and just showed up the next day
Yeah.
in presence. So I could have learned immediately from the day before. So as we're doing these shares and we're wrapping up the last day, you talked about the day before, and what you said about me made me cry again. I was like, this is a great weekend. Like ups and downs about, what did you say? Like exactly.
I was, they had brought up that, what was happening back, the things that we didn't know about. So they cleared the air with that. Then they talked about you bringing up some truth. And when it got to me, I said, listen, like I was the one that hated conflict. I was the one that didn't like these conversations. I was you in all of these situations.
You meaning all the people
yes,
there.
I was that person. And when I met Dave, and the reason we've been married for this long is because he's constantly challenged me to have these uncomfortable conversations, to feel these uncomfortable things, and to like look in the mirror and be like, how can we make this better? Which is not even something that your intention is to do, right? That's not even something that you're intending, but and I said, listen, I've had these conversations over the 15 years and they've sucked. And sometimes I'm like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to have this, but it always comes to a beautiful place. And it always comes to a place of like enlightenment or growth. And that's where transformation happens. And so in that moment, obviously I believed in that, and that was situational to what we were experiencing. But I thought about it later on and I was like, there's so many things that we witnessed that weekend that had to do with couples, right? Mm-hmm. And we were one of two couples in there. We were the ones that had been married like the longest and hadn't had a divorce, things like that. And there's so much to be learned, because in that moment, I could have easily made it about my experience and made it about how I'm reacting and how I felt. But it was more about how I could support you, because that's what a marriage is, right? It's a marriage of like, I got your back and I'm going to stick up for you, even when it's really uncomfortable. And let's say I don't agree with everything that you said or everything that you do, because there are many times that I don't, but I still respect the fact that you speak in truth, and that if I believe that that's the case, then I'm going to support that and I'm going to back it, right? And I could have gone a very different way and been like, I am woman, hear me roar. This is like my own experience. Or a victim or whatever.
Yep.
But instead I chose to say, this is our fucking superpower, right? This is why we have a strong marriage. This is why we constantly put ourselves in the fire first, and we're the examples for people. And so I felt like that was the opportunity to really show people. And Amy even responded to my DM a couple days ago, and I read it this morning, and it was like, I admire the love that Dave has for you. And it was like, I think people can see that when we're in experiences like that, but it takes a lot of challenging fucking times to get through and to break through to that point, right? And if you're in a marriage and you're not willing to go there and you're not willing to address it, things will break, and they will break easily. Because there was every single moment and every single conversation, I was like, it could go two ways, right? This could get really ugly, and now we are packing up our bags and we're fighting and we're leaving.
5-6 years ago, or at different times in my life, I would have had us on a plane.
Exactly.
And
I would have resented you,
Yep.
and I would have been so fucking mad, and it would have been a whole thing. But
And this
instead
time
of that,
I trusted the process. I followed you, and we worked together because we'd been through it
yes,
before. Yeah,
exactly. And so it's taken a lot of work. It's taken a lot of understanding. It's taken a lot of uncomfortable, conversations or moments, and even stepping outside of yourself and been like, what does this look like? Like, how can we make this better? And how can we win from this instead of this destroying what we have? And so I think we did that this weekend. And I think that was even more powerful than you sitting with the horse, even more powerful than my experience, even more powerful as a group, is that we were able to come together as a husband and a wife, supporting each other and like loving each other through it and coming out on the other end stronger than we were when we came in.
it's beautifully said. And it is an interesting frame to be like how fragile all of these relationships that people are having are, and how something that they think is breaking them could be the thing that could be the breakthrough for them with just a tiny little 2 millimeter shift.
Yep.
Not only like was I ready to go, but when I showed up, I was having energy. And even then, one conversation with Brad, one conversation with Amy, talk with one other person, and I was like, holy shit, I was like light as a feather immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And
I know you enough to know that, okay, let's go to sleep. Let's take a beat. Let's ask some questions and let's get through it to the other side, right? Because it could have went really bad. It could have been a disaster, and we would have come home. We wouldn't have learned anything from the experience. And it would have been this thing that we would have been like looking back on, like, what if we would have stuck with it? Or what if we would have done something different? And we were able to turn it around into something great. But we know each other enough and I'm learning more and more, and it's not always perfect, but I'm learning when to push, when to prod, when to hold back, when to stay silent. Like, I'm trying to, and same for you, right? Like, if I'm going through something, then it's like, when can you stand up and support me? When can you give me my space, give me my boundaries? It's what the horses are teaching us. It's just, we have to do that with each other.
you're so very aware. And, these things that we experience, they affect us in unconscious ways that we may not even know or even acknowledge till after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
But right away, I was coaching something that I didn't really prepare for. I was asking questions, ended up being coaching. It was like maybe 50 or 100 realtors on it. And I was so dropped in from the weekend. And even though I was like resisting this softness, I noticed that my coaching was like the fire and the intensity was there, but I was able to control that, like,
The thermostat.
so much of my fire that there was a deeper connection. And I was like, would that have been there if I hadn't had this experience? And I had like a whole new way of being able to even saying name things. That's not something I would have said in the past, right? And to be able to have all of these tools and ways that I can get to the thing, even using a horse. I'm so used to, like, when a breakthrough comes and I see it happening in a person, like holding the space, holding them there, letting them work through, holding the mirror up very consistently, right? Not breaking it, and letting them do it and doing all the work. And that is like an art in itself. Like, you're great at the science. We've talked about this. This is the beauty of us. You're the science, I'm the art, right? And so being able to let the horse do the work while I'm assisting, I can't wait to be able to like jump in and be the coach, right? Even with psychedelics, like I know I'm going to do that in the future as a coach, like too, like letting the plant medicine do some of that work and kind of being like, I gave all the prompts and I set the stage as much as I can and I'm here to guide, but I'm getting out of the way.
Yep.
Right? That's a new thing for me because I'm so used to holding the entire world and
holding the container and letting the horse do what it does naturally, right?
Which also shows up in a marriage. So overall, what would you give the trip?
An 8.5 out of 10.
I would meet you there. And it opened up a completely new containers for us as well.
Well, and it showed us what we want to do and how we want to do it, right? Things that we're taking with us and things that don't align with us. And I think that that's going to be the beauty, is that so many people could do this work, but there's going to be so many different modalities and there's different people for each one, right? And I'm excited to see how we put our own spin on it, because even you and I are going to do it differently.
How do you think couples should be doing this? Do you think they should be going on a Tony Robbins retreat or a business retreat or a Joe Dispenza retreat, or like?
I think most couples, if they have a good relationship, and even if they don't, they can find some alignment within what they want to do and what they want to accomplish. And if they can find something, anything that they can both plug into, even if for a small amount of time, it could be a day workshop or a day date or something like that, for a small amount of time, to just get a feel for how you respond in situations together as a couple, I think magic can happen.
This is what the 10-year marriage is. Mm-hmm. This is going into the future, or even right now, having a conversation, talking about the future while looking at the past. This is what our relationship looked like. This is what we've done up until this point. What does the future look like? And are we willing to collide to see how we're going to co-collaborate and live it? I didn't have equine therapy certification on my bingo card for 2025.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
But what a beautiful surprise, and maybe the thing I needed the most. Mm-hmm. And without you and me having trust in you, but also me supporting you, pushing you with the horse, pushing you to follow through, introducing you to equine therapy, you being impulsive and setting it up, me saying I'll go do it with her. Like, without that forward like commitment,
yeah,
none of this happens.
We're a good team.
Yeah, I agree.